Hi everybody, Carol Garrison here with Carol's Creative Escape. It is Monday, May 5th already. So it's time for another Make It Monday. Hard to believe that we're already into May though. The time is going so fast right now. I am here tonight to share with you another fun card fold. What I really like about this one is it gets to my roots of pretty paper, stamps, die cuts, and fun folds, all combined into one card. What more could you ask for? It has been a nice week here. We've had a little bit cooler temps last week, but over the weekend we actually hit 82. Spent some time with a friend yesterday just sitting and relaxing up by the lake. I haven't done that in a really long time. So it was kind of nice. It wasn't exactly what we had planned, but it was nice to be able to just sit back and just chat and catch up a little bit. Other than that, just keeping busy with stuff around the house and work and that kind of thing. But for those of you that are tuning in live, thank you so much for taking your time. For those that may be watching us on replay, I do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule, even on replay, because I know how busy all of us are, myself included, when it comes to watching videos. And sometimes you can get lost in that rabbit hole, and sometimes it just is a little bit of time that you need to regenerate. So I'm grateful that you're choosing to spend some of your precious time with me as I work on cards. I've been making cards for over 30 years. My goal is to simply spread joy one card at a time. And I do that by sending cards. It makes me happy when I receive a homemade card. And more importantly, not more importantly, but just as important, I love being able to help people find their own creativity and confidence to make cards and actually send them to others as well. So that's kind of why I do these videos. I'm not affiliated with any company. I just simply want to show people how to do things and be able to find that creativity, or maybe help somebody over one of those little blocks that we sometimes get when we're creative. As long as you're having fun and enjoying it and maybe learning something new in the process, it doesn't matter, as long as we're learning together from each other and finding a little bit of peace and calm inside of us. So I am going to stop talking here because I've kind of gone on, and I am going to flip my camera over, and I apologize during this bumpy hurdle time, but we will get it done and get you going here. All right. I'm hoping that I can. Sometimes I am really good at getting my camera to focus up just a little bit closer, and lately it's become more difficult, and I don't really know why. So, you might get to see a little bit more of my mess than what I want you to see, I guess, is what might happen here. We're going to scoot things up a little bit. I think everybody that does these live videos really likes when their camera is just focused right on what they're working on, because all around our space we've got this mess that we don't really want anybody to see. And like I said, lately my mess has been more prominent than I want it to be in my videos. And I do apologize. It looks like we're having, oh, there we go. Phew. All right. It looks like my internet might be a little bit slow tonight. We were just commenting on that. How it feels like it's been slower, not just here, but even at work, it's been a little bit slower. It's probably all just in our heads, but it's all right. So tonight I am sharing a card that I found online from a card maker by the name of Lynn Dunn of Stamptastic Designs. And it covers all of the things that I love when I'm making cards. And that includes pretty designer paper. Check, especially when we can show both sides of it. It also includes kind of fancy fun folds. And it's easy to make. So elegantly simple is kind of my card style. If I can share fancy papers, fun folds. And what I like about this card is I use die cuts on some of it. I fussy cut some stuff. I use designer paper. I kind of just tied in everything in this one little card. And of course you can make it as much or as little as you want it to be when you are making your card. That's the beauty of it. You get to create it, make it what fits your style. So I'm going to show you how to make this card. It is very easy. This should be a short video tonight, assuming I don't lose everything in the process. I'm going to use this paper. I do have an idea in my head to make this into a kid's card. It's just not all there yet. So I'll be working on it, and hopefully I can post pictures of it when I get that far. I think I know what I want to do, but it just wasn't ready to go live tonight. So I'm going to do another floral one. This card is a congratulations card. I thought it'd be a pretty wedding card, and you could just write a quick note to the couple in here. This card that I'm going to do is a get well soon card. I don't have many of those on hand, and every once in a while you do need them. So I've got 5.5 by 11 3/4. So you're basically cutting off a 1/4 of an inch. What's nice about this particular card layout is you can make 2 cards out of 1 sheet of designer series paper. Okay, then you need a piece of cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 5.5, because we're just going to mount the card designer paper right onto our cardstock. Okay, then you can do whatever you want for your piece right here, as well as the piece that's on the inside for making a note. And so I am using the stitch nested labels from Stampin' Up. It's just the shape of die. I like using nesting dies because you can get them with good borders and stuff around it. This is a retired set of dies, but odds are you can find it somewhere online. And then I am using, not that I'm selling it, keep that in mind, but I'm just letting you know, so in case you want to look for it somewhere. The Petal Park stamp set. It's got the closest flower to some of what's in here that I have. And then luckily for me, it comes with a coordinating punch, so I'll be able to punch those flowers out. And then I am using a stamp set from Waffle Flower that is called Sweet Lattice Sentiment. And it's the Feel Better Soon stamp right here that I will be using. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is a very simple card. So you're going to want to, if you do have an up-down direction on your paper, make sure that you're cutting according to that. This one, I really felt like it could go either way, so I didn't worry too much about it. But we're going to fold back here on the first score line. I should probably tell you where it's scored at. It is scored at 1 3/4, 4 3/4, and 7 3/4. So I'm going to start by folding at that 7 3/4 in a valley, fold it back as a mountain, and then fold it in. Something is not right with that. I wonder if I scored at the wrong place. Let me double check. 1 3/4. I think I scored it a 1/4 inch too far. Good thing I can make 2 cards out of 1 piece of designer paper, huh? Let me grab. And sadly, I think that was, just a minute. Nope, I found more. Whew. You know, the problem is when you're making cards and you're using your stash up in the process, if you make a cutting error, sometimes that could be problematic. Fortunately, that's not a cutting error, just a scoring error, so I know I can reuse it. So again, I'm going to cut this at 5.5, and I need to just take a 1/4 of an inch off. And then I will score it carefully this time at 1 3/4. Four and 3/4. It's frustrating because I thought I was so prepared for the class tonight. Sometimes I almost think I'm better off just winging it. Oh, I seem to make more measuring errors when I think I'm prepared. Oh well, that's all right. Set that aside. So now again, we are going to fold it as a valley, as a mountain, and as a valley. So now you can see on my first piece, right, how I knew I was wrong right away is I had this right here and it should have been flush. So not a big deal, but it'll work better now for the card. I am going to burnish all of my scores quite well because I do want it to be flat. But you got to be careful too because of the designer series paper. You can actually make it tear a little bit because it is thinner than our cardstock. All right, now that we've got that piece fixed, we're going to take our card base that we created. And again, this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm just going to take my adhesive and put this onto my card base. And I'm just centering it. Oh. Then you know what I forgot to do? Again, this is an easy fix. It's not 5 1/2, it's 5 1/4. I'll give you the measurements once I'm all done, since I am having issues tonight. 5, oh, I don't want that adhesive on here. Okay. So from here we will go 5 1/4, and I'm just going to trim off that little bit. Excuse me. I'm going to try that again. I'm going through all my layers here, which is why it didn't trim it as well as I would have liked it to. There we go. Again, I'll give all the measurements at the end because I'm sure I've confused some of you. This card is way easier than what I'm making it out to be. And that's all right because we all have these nights sometimes. So again, I'm now going to center this onto my card base. I learned a trick years ago about looking at opposite corners to make sure they're even, and if they are, then the other corners will be even as well. And that generally works for me. And so now we've got our card that opens up like this. So the next thing I'm going to do is stamp a little bit on this card. I actually need another piece of basic white scrap, which I just keep a plastic bin in my work area of cards that are pieces that I haven't used. Sometimes I'll even have things I die cut that I just decided I wasn't going to use. And I think that piece will work. And then I always have the right size scrap that I need. I might have to look a little bit, but it always shows up. So to stick with the card theme, and because it's going to be posted or attached to white cardstock, I am just going to stamp this all in the darker red ink here. And because this is a red ink, it does tend to stain stamps. And I'm also going to be using Memento ink on my sentiment. I am going to start by putting a little Versamark on my stamp. That simply just protects the stamp from absorbing all of the ink. And so I'm going to ink this all up. and stamp those images. This will dry a little bit lighter than what you're seeing right now, so don't be alarmed by that. I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm also going to stamp on here my sentiment. And that way that red ink can dry a little bit. And again, I want to just protect this, especially my photopolymers. I do not do this when I'm using the red rubber stamps, but I will do it when I'm using the photopolymer just because they do tend to stain more easily. It doesn't change how the stamps work, and I actually don't mind a little bit of color on them because it helps me see the image better when I am stamping. But with the black ink in particular, I do prefer to put that little layer of protection on there, simply because I don't like how it discolors my stuff. So this is a very, very tight fit. It is photopolymer, so I am using a foam pad underneath to stamp on. Let that ink soak a little bit, and then we're done. Again, the image might be just a titch too big for the space I'm stamping in, but I really wanted to use this one. And we're going to let that dry, and then we will come back here, and I'm going to take my punch and hopefully be able to line these flowers all up. Somehow, some way. So sometimes when you have these that have multiple images, it has to be lined up really just so. So it does help to trim off a little bit so that you can slide it in and maneuver it in your punch. And there we go. I think I got it. All right, so I've punched out 3 flowers that I can use. And then there also is this cute little leaf. And so I may, just trying to decide the color I want to stamp it in, or rather the paper that I want to use. And I'm thinking that it might be this color, which is slipping my brain altogether, even though I just used it. Pretty Peacock. So for this, I've got my 3 flowers punched out. I'm going to grab my Pretty Peacock ink, and I'm going to just stamp tone on tone. And I could actually do this with the color or with my Versamark to get the tone on tone, but tonight I am choosing to use my ink because it does give it a darker color, which is part of what I want to pick up. Grab another block here. I just need to look at my punch real quick so I know kind of the angle that I need to put this at. And I'm not quite sure how many I want, so I am going to stamp a couple of them. And we'll set that aside. And we'll get our punch back here, and we'll see how it goes. So this is another one of those that I'm going to have to trim off. I probably don't have to trim it quite as much as I am, but it just makes it easier for me. And again, when I'm using a punch like this where I'm sliding in to just get a piece, I'll take a scrap and just adhere it to the back of my cardstock. And that gives me like a little handle that I can manipulate the paper in the punch. And you know what's going to happen if I do that though? My other 2 leaves are going to get punched out. So that's all right. We're just going to make this even smaller and do it 1 leaf at a time. So now I've got it lined up the way I want it to, and I'm not going to damage the other leaves that I stamped. I guess this video tonight I'm showing you what not to do when making a card, huh? Or what happens if you do that and how do you fix it? And I think it's just as important to know that. There's very few cards that you just have messed up so thoroughly that you just have to get rid of it. I think there's always a way to fix things if you just think a little bit outside the box or change how you're doing it. It's not a right or wrong, and especially like the ink blobs and stuff that we can get, to me that's just a chance, as people often say, to embellish things. Little flaws like that you could easily cover up. All right, and I got that lined up. So now I have a couple leaves that I can use as well when I'm decorating the front of my card. All right, I think we are done with our stamping. So let's start to assemble. So I'm going to repeat real quick before we start to assemble. You need 1 piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so that's standard card size. You need another piece of designer series paper that measures 5 1/4 by 11 3/4. You're going to score it at 1 3/4, 4 3/4, and 7 3/4, and it's Valley, Mountain, Valley for folding it. So when I'm saying that, referring to Valley, Mountain, Valley, that's what I'm talking about. All right, and then I'm just using pieces of scrap. I actually keep one of those shoe boxes that I showed you earlier as a scrap bin for kind of the cream or very vanilla type paper, one for my white paper and one for my black paper, so that I always have those available as scraps, because inevitably we make some of those scraps, don't we? Now, as I've got this card, you can tell that these are highlighted a little bit darker. And so I'm actually going to take one of my blends and kind of color in on the center of these so that it does match that darker tone. So I'm going to use my dark blends, and it's the coordinating color to this ink, Dark Cherry Cobbler. If you use, like, these are the Copic markers, they do sometimes, if they haven't been used, will blurb out a little bit of the alcohol. So I always like to open mine away from the project I'm working on. And I'm just filling in kind of the white spaces so that I get some of the two-tone look that is in my paper. I'm not going to touch the outside edges of this because it's going to be white on white. So it really isn't going to show a whole lot. But if it bothered you, you could come through with a pen and really color in the white edges. I would prefer not to. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead. So I'm just doing this on my scratch paper, and I'm going to go around and color. And part of the reason I just changed my mind, just so that you know, that's part of the creative process. But I realize that some of these are probably going to hang off this piece of paper, and that white would make it stand out a little bit more than what I intend it to do. And so, because these are kind of two-toned flowers on the paper, I am going to color that, and that way they'll blend in just a little bit more, but not not so much to get lost on the paper. if that makes sense. And it just adds a little bit more depth to the flower as well. And again, you can make these cards as simple or as fancy as you want to make them. I don't think the coloring I'm doing is all that complicated, so I don't feel like I'm spending a lot of extra time on that part. Might feel that way on the video, but that's not my intent. All right, now I've got my flowers done. I've got my leaves. So let's set that aside and go ahead and get this assembled. So before I start adding my flowers, because I think they are going to hang off, I want to see what it looks like on that black. I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to this black base. And these particular dies have two slightly different shapes, so they're going to be a little more overlap here or hang over here than there is on that part. But I've got that assembled, and now I can just play with how I'm going to put my flowers on. I want to pop a couple of them up, and I have a few leaves I can tuck in here too, and we'll just sort of see how it goes. So with this biggest flower, that one I'm just going to adhere to the card, and I am going to have it come off just a little bit. These two I want to pop up, and so we will do that. I think I'll just kind of put one there and put one there. And then I don't know that I'm going to use all of my leaves, but I do think getting a little bit of the green color in here is important. And so we'll put a little bit of adhesive there. And I think I'll just kind of slide that one in like that. And trying to think where. I think I'll put one there and a second one there, so there'll kind of be two up there. Okay. A lot of times when I'm adding leaves behind things, I really do have to play with it just a little bit to figure out how I want things to look. A little bit of my handle still stuck to the leaf. But there, that adds a little bit of color, but keeps us kind of true to form with the solid color of here. And then we're going to adhere this to the front of the card. So when we're doing that, we only want to put adhesive on one side of the card, because if I put it on both, then it's all going to stick and it won't open up the way we want it to open up. Now, wouldn't it be the end of the world if you put this, you know, so that it held down both pieces? Then it would just open up more like this. But I like that accordion type look, so I'm only going to put it on that piece. So again, you need to figure out which direction this is going to go so that you're only putting adhesive on one side. And then I am going to center this in this opening. So it won't be quite centered on this piece or that piece by itself, but on this piece as a whole, not this individual section, but this whole chunk, if that makes sense. And again, you get to put it wherever you want when you're making a card, because it's your card. All right. And so I have no adhesive there, and we've got that done. And then this is just going to be a spot for you to write a quick note on the inside of the card. So when you put it in, you don't want to center it like this, because if you center it, it's going to hang out a little bit. So you want it just off center a little bit so that it doesn't hang out. And so I always like to eyeball just a little bit where it's going to end up. Up and down, I know where I want it. And I think I'm going to put it right about here. And it does not show when my card is folded close. So there is that. I had a couple ways I thought I could embellish it. I've got this ribbon, but I honestly don't feel like I have a good place to put this ribbon, even though it's beautiful. So my other thought was to simply just use some gold pearls that I have in my collection. And so let me pull a few of those out real quick. And I'm going to slide a little bit off. I do want one on here, and I think I'm going to put a couple over here, and I might even break my own rule and put one more here. Usually I always do it in groups of 3, but on this one I'm going to put 4. That way there's just a little bit on each section. Living on the wild side. All right, so there was your simple to make card, done much more complicated than it needed to be. Super simple, super easy. Measure correctly, cut once, and it won't take you much time at all. So again, measurements 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Designer series paper is 5 1/4 by 11 3/4, and it is scored at 1 3/4, 4 3/4, and 7 3/4 with a Valley Mountain Valley fold. And then you can use whatever shape you want as your focal point here. And then I just use my scraps for that, but you use whatever works best for you, and then embellish it however you feel like doing. So I've got a congratulations, kind of a wedding card, and then a feel better soon card to send to somebody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Take care, everyone. Next week, there will not be a video on May 12th, but I will have another video on May 19th. I've got a business trip, so I'm not going to be home to be able to do that. If I have time this weekend, however, I will record a video and have that pre-done, so it won't be a live. It'll just be a pre-recorded video. So I look forward to seeing everybody on the 19th and via replay probably on the 12th. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Bye-bye.